Hello and welcome back. Today's an exciting moment. We're starting a whole new module with you all, and the module is emotion regulation. Right before we sat down, Faith and I were talking about just how important this topic is, specifically for our leaders who are dealing with people problems, and there's a lot of emotions coming at them. Being able to regulate yourself helps you regulate the room and helps you work with people. And then for all of our people out there, even if you're not in a leadership role, knowing how to regulate yourself and show up in different places in a way that's productive and effective is equally as important. So these skills are applicable for all humans. And of course, we'll try to weave in some examples for our leaders and our teams. Okay, so for day one in emotion regulation, what I want to talk about today is naming the three core functions of emotions, and then we'll talk about the specific action urges that come with emotions. The way I like to think about this, and Faith, as we're talking through this today, think about this as the platform of understanding and just being able to name our emotions. We really have to have a good solid foundation there first before we jump into some other regulation strategies. And paradoxically, just by naming our emotions, knowing what they do for us, that actually goes a long way in being able to regulate our emotions. So it's seemingly simple, but there's a lot there. There's a lot to learn, and then we'll grow from here. So if anyone has the DBT skills training manual with them, we're in emotion regulation, and where I like to start is on handout 3. And like we do, we'll put a little clip of this on the screen so y'all can follow along. But I want to start with talking about what our emotions do for us. So 3 core components here. We say that our emotions motivate us and they organize us for action. Our emotions communicate to others. So without us having to do anything, our emotions are always communicating to others. And then emotions communicate to ourselves. So 3 core functions. Before I go into those in more detail, just thinking about how that information can be helpful for us. Think about the last time you felt an emotion strongly, and then ask yourself the question, was the emotion doing any of those 3 things? Or what was that emotion doing in those 3 categories? What was that emotion trying to motivate you to do? Or what was it communicating to yourself? Or what was it maybe perhaps communicating to other people?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I can think of a bunch of different examples right now. Just trying to think of one that was less personal, but more like a leadership thing. But yeah, I'd had a pretty intense conversation with someone, and I can see how the emotion that was coming up for me in that moment was really pushing me to be clear on my boundaries with that person. I could see that in action, and I could see how in that moment the emotion that was also coming up for me was probably communicating to that person that I needed them to back off a little bit. And then for myself, was that it? The 3 different things?
Yeah.
Okay. And then for myself, it just was, because I could feel it being boundary. I need to establish where I need this person to kind of stop where I begin and where they end. And it really helped me actually follow through on it in that moment to do it.
Nice.
Yeah, because I think if it was an emotionless conversation, I would have been I'm not sure what's happening here, but the emotion helped me really see that,
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And so even in that, I didn't hear you name the specific emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say that's okay. What you just did, if you could do that in the moment, or even doing this now, let's say you start thinking about that conversation again, just by naming these different components, again, can be a place or start that helps us to regulate what we're feeling. So I say that because sometimes we can get tripped up here. This is brand new information. We're learning lots of new things around emotions, that we can get stuck on, like, well, what is that emotion? Or is it this emotion or that emotion? And we want to work our way there, and you will absolutely get there over time. And just by naming what you were feeling or what it was motivating for you to do, or kind of that the play by play, that alone can be really effective, or it's a great place to start.
That's like so nice to hear. 'Cause I think I shared in like one of the first episodes that we did together was like, I'm a recovering know-it-all, and I spent a ton of time really trying to deepen my emotional fluency with that feelings wheel of like just the core emotions. I could name those just fine. Then the secondary ring, I was like, I can name some of these. And so I spent a lot of time deepening my fluency there so I could name those and then or accurately express there. And then I expanded it out to that third ring. And I do get tripped up sometimes when I can't like name the exact emotion I'm feeling, because it's like an inside out, when it's like that marble that's colored with a whole bunch of different emotions. It's not just one, but in that moment, like some like fear was probably coming up for me, some anger was probably coming up for me. Like it was a bunch of little things all playing into that sense of, whoa, I need to put a boundary here and be like, time out. Ask
Yes.
space. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah.
Great. Then great example. And so relatable. Like that's also another truth. So we know that our emotions, we're hardwired to use that language. Like we're hardwired to experience emotions, and all emotions come, I like to say, nicely packaged with an action urge, right? That motivating us for action. And the reality is that oftentimes we are feeling lots of different emotions at the same time, or sometimes we're feeling competing emotions, so we feel different urges or called to do different things. So it can just be really complicated and like very burdensome to sort through it.
You're just
Which
so
is
in your
why,
head.
huh?
You're so in your head trying to sort through it sometimes.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes.
Yeah.
No, all good, good. Um, so that's just a reality of it. And that's why I actually love talking about when we get there, we get to the point of talking about action urges, because it's a great place to focus on. Like without having to get to the emotion name, like if we could just feel what we're feeling and focus on what is it that we want to do with it, that can create a space for a lot of movement to happen. Okay, so let's talk about what our emotions do and what action they're preparing us for. Let's start there. So I'll pull, we'll show, again, a visual for this. But I like to walk through core 5 emotions that in the psychology world, there's kind of an agreed upon set of like universal emotions that we all feel and that we all experience. And some emotions are very cultural based of what will prompt that emotion to show up, or kind of what we've learned over time is like an appropriate response for that emotion. So I'll walk us through the kind of core 5, and then we can add a few in too, just to talk about them, because I think they're all important and it's all helpful knowledge to have. So let's start with like a fun emotion, or emotion that we're not here to, actually I should say this, we're not here to judge any of our emotions. So no emotion is good nor bad, they're all just showing up for a reason. And there are emotions though that we do like having, and ones that we would prefer not to have as often, or maybe the pleasant emotions or unpleasant emotions. So starting with, again, a fun one, let's talk about joy. So first, think about how you feel when you feel joyful, when you feel happy. So just take a moment, think about maybe the last time you were feeling joy, and just notice what you feel in your body. And then think about what was that emotion organizing or motivating you to do. And I love this one because the function of joy, one of the things that joy tends to do, is it wants us to keep around whatever is making us feel joyful. So if anyone's ever had like the best time somewhere and then it comes time to end, you're like, I don't want to leave. Like that's because joy is there and joy wants more of it, right? So you're at a concert, you're dancing, you're having fun, like you want to keep doing that. So that emotion being there helps us to kind of sustain that feeling. There's so many benefits that come from experiencing these emotions that are really feel good and connecting emotions. I noticed you were smiling when you were thinking about something. And what did you notice just kind of tuning into yourself? Like, what did you feel, or what do you remember feeling last time you were thinking about joy and happiness?
Oh man, it's just like it feels like I'm filled with champagne. It's just like bubbly and light and like sunshine, and it just feels um yeah, just warm and like safe and all of the good things. It just comes up there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that emotion communicating to yourself, when I'm feeling bubbly and warm and safe, maybe I want to keep doing the thing that I'm doing, or maybe I want to stay around the person.
Yeah.
It is giving you that information. So really important to listen to.
Mhm.
What are you feeling?
And then I was thinking about this DJ that we love. Bless
Yes.
him, like has started like helping people transition out at the end of a concert, like has actually built in a buffer at the end when the show is over to let people just kind of like come down out of that slowly versus like show's over, lights up, harsh reality sets in. Like I've never appreciated him more.
That's so great. That's so great.
And obviously I was just thinking about like you and your amazing kids and just like yeah, being a huge source of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. So sweet.
It's true. Yeah.
Ah, different, great examples. So joy, it motivates us. So we're hardwired to experience it. We don't have to like think about it. Like kind of like, it saves us time in the sense like you don't have to really think about like, well, why am I feeling joy? Like you just keep doing the thing that feels joy. Like we're off and running, right? And then it's communicating to yourself like I want this. I love this. I want to be part of it. And then it's also as you experience it, you're going to be communicating to others. So right now, like just when I noticed a little shift for you, like I just wanted to check in with you, but
Yeah.
an emotion showed up, right? And I noticed it. So I just thought like, oh, that just actually captures a really great example of how our emotions are always communicating to others. So again, like you weren't consciously trying to control that. It just showed up and it just
Mhm.
happened.
Yeah.
Does that make
It's
sense?
it's amazing. Then for
Yeah.
someone who used to try to like mask a lot of that, you know,
Yeah.
it's really helpful to like remember that. That's the whole point. It's like they
Yes.
can communicate that if you let them be seen.
Yeah. Well, let's do a slight detour and then we'll come back to the five
Let's
emotions.
detour. I'm here for it.
Sorry, y'all.
It all connects. Same destination.
So, yes. So, what you were just saying of learning to like mask certain emotions. So, we all have different lived experiences of this, but by and large, like we just get information from society or our family or partners or just people in our lives around what emotions are, like air quotes, okay to show and which ones are not. And there's a gajillion different reasons of how the messaging shows up, right? So I think it's really important to say here that when it comes to regulating your emotions now, it's really important that you have agency and that you're choosing to regulate the emotions that you want to regulate. A little pushback sometimes in emotion regulation is like, well, who is telling me that I need to regulate this emotion? Or like, why do I need to regulate certain emotions? Or why are certain people asking me of this? So it's really important that like you really tune into like what feels true for you. And then it's made me think of a second part, which is emotion regulation's bi-directional. Sometimes we need to turn down the emotions. A lot of times when we think about emotion regulation, we think about like, oh, I'm feeling something really intensely and I want to bring it down. But this opposite is also true, that there's sometimes maybe I've like taught myself to like really mask something, or I say like I'm not allowed to feel this emotion, or I shouldn't express a certain emotion. But then it leaves people wondering what's happening, or maybe you've gotten feedback on like your team or from people in your life that like they don't know what's going on for you.
Mhm.
And that's a skill of learning how to upregulate some of your emotions. So like I feel it, can I let myself express it versus doing these like kind of old strategies to keep it at bay.
And that's interesting because that ties into some of the stuff you and I see all the time with teams. Because
Yes.
what often happens for those of you who aren't
Yes.
in the room with us is when we're working with teams and talking about the interpersonal dynamics, often somebody on the team will say in private, this one peer is exceptional at their job, but they're so emotionally reactive that it actually makes it really hard to work with them. It's one of the worst parts of my job is dealing with that emotional reactivity. So that could be like a down regulating thing potentially,
Absolutely.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I think I spoke to the 2 points that were like my little detours right when you brought that up.
Good.
So let's keep kind of trekking through the different emotions and flowing through the 3 functions. So joy is often like that pleasant emotion. We love it. We want to keep it around. So let's talk about one that's maybe unpleasant. Let's talk about anger for a second. So anger shows up when an important goal is being blocked. And I love that framing of it because every time I get angry now, this used to be one that I used to try to regulate down all the time. Like I should be angry, I should be angry. It's not helpful. Now the question I ask myself is, this anger is showing up, it's motivating me for some action. We'll talk about that action in just a second. But what's the goal being blocked? Or like what's the block here? So sometimes what that blockage is can feel like more threatening or like a physical, or sometimes it's even on a much smaller scale, but it still sets off anger. So last time you experienced feeling really angry in the car because maybe someone cut you off or something. Oh, was there a goal being blocked? Were you trying to get somewhere on time? Were you
Yep.
trying to, I don't know, complete your last errand of the day and just get home and now you're feeling delayed? So usually there's a goal that's being blocked. And then it motivates us to then be unblocked. So oftentimes that's like defending ourselves, or maybe sometimes that's attacking back, depending on, again, the context. But we want to move that block. And again, this is, especially with anger too, this is one that we can judge. We're like, why is this showing up? Or I shouldn't be feeling this way. It's like, well, it's showing up for a reason. And it's motivating us. It's there to be helpful in some way.
It's like the
Now,
most helpful constructive framing to hear
Yes.
that. It's just an important goal is being blocked. Like,
Yes.
wow, what a great way to engage with anger. And it makes sense of why it might be coming up.
Yeah. So our emotions are automatic. They just get set off and they can be consciously controlled. So anger gets set off. If we become aware of that, or if we are aware of it, then we can tap into, now what am I going to do with that? Like, how do I channel that anger? Or maybe I'm feeling really angry and what I'm having the urge to do is not appropriate or it's not going to work. Or maybe I've gotten feedback from people that my displays of anger aren't aligned with the culture at work or culture of my family, or my partner doesn't want me to express anger that way. So there is a choice point here, kind of back to that idea that we talked about, distress tolerance. Like, we can do something with it, but step one, can we first just name it, validate it, pay attention to it, and that helps us be able to then regulate it.
Yes. Yes. So helpful. So actionable. You know, I love that.
So that second box of like emotions always communicating to others, it's important to remember again, like how that's just automatic. And when there's a discrepancy between what we're seeing with someone versus what they're saying, we're typically going to trust what we see. So, for example, if you've ever experienced, like, you walk into a room where you're talking with someone and you're like, are you okay? Like, you can just tell something's wrong, right? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. Or maybe they even say it calmly, like, yes, I'm fine. But you can like just see it on their bodies. And I think about this one a lot with anger. Like when someone's really angry or feeling upset about something, that emotion is still present, but they're trying to show up in the room, or they're trying to still carry on with the meeting agenda, or they're just, trying to carry on the day, of how you're still probably emoting to the people around you. That'd be a great that'd be a great time to do some toilet mindfulness. bringing the skills in full circle
Bring
here.
it full circle.
Or do some tip skills to help change the physiological response. Or if we can't do any of those things, how important and how helpful and productive it would be to just name it. Like, you know what? Yeah, like I'm still feeling the feels, and we're going to carry on. Like, we'll have time to come back to this afterwards, or there's nothing that you all can do. This is something that happened in my personal life right before I walked in the door. Like, I'm sorry, like I'm just showing up this way, but like, it is what it is, or we're going to work with it.
I think that's such a powerful thing you just did too, because I feel like so many of us, why other people's emotions can be so challenging to experience and just kind of ride the waves of them with them, is because we don't know what they need from us. And this comes up often in a lot of the leaders that I work with, is they're just like, I don't know what they need. Do they just need me to listen to them vent? Do they need me to help them problem solve? Do they need me to apologize? Like, did I do something? What do they need from me? And so what you just modeled just now of just saying like, no, I'm just feeling a certain kind of way. We don't have to talk about it right now. Like the Gottmans, isn't it the Gottmans who said you just name a time for revisiting it later? We'll come back to this. Like, how about we meet separately after this meeting and we can talk about it, but now's not the time.
Yeah.
And that helps build trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The example that was just coming to my mind was when I first started teaching. I remember it was really new. So I had a little bit of anxiety just in general about like being a professor in the room and kind of how I'm supposed to show up and all that stuff. And then one day it was just organized chaos or unorganized chaos, like all day long.
Just chaos.
All my plans I had before I walked into the room, and I just remember feeling like I felt like I was on the verge of having a panic attack. But I just didn't have time to like really tend to myself. Like I just had to like just show up, and then I felt myself just trying to push through that. And then it kind of occurred to me that like everyone in the room is probably picking up on how I'm feeling, even if I think that they're not, or I'd like to believe that like, whatever, that's not happening. And I just kind of paused and I was like, okay, I just need to be kind of real with you all for a moment. Like, let me tell you a little bit about what just happened for me. I walked them through a mindfulness exercise because I said it'd be really helpful for me to have some space to kind of ground before we can move into today's content. And the amount of people in the room that then start talking about what they had went through before like the class had started. Someone had like just lost someone in their family, or someone like got really bad feedback on a presentation that they had, and it just created this little bubble of people connecting and just being real versus like us just being in our roles. And that always stuck with me. Like from there on, I was always like, okay, whatever I'm feeling, can I speak to it in some way that is productive? Not me seeking to just talk about it just to talk, but more of creating that space of modeling it, and then us having that kind of community of doing it together.
And what a powerful lesson for leaders too, right? To know that can create that sense of connectedness among your team, even just by, and help you. It's like it's a 360 win.
Everybody wins, right?
Yeah. It's not a public therapy session, to be clear, where you're just monologuing endlessly. It's
Yes. Yeah, there's some function behind it.
Wow, that's really cool that you did that.
Yeah, and I felt way more regulated. Imagine that. I could talk about it. I could name it.
Wild. And that right there is why you're a professor.
Okay, so joy, anger. Let's talk about fear. Let's talk about anxiety. So anxiety comes from the fear camp. And fear shows There's lots of different prompting events for fear, but generally, if we had to make this concise, there's a threat to our well-being. So that can be a perceived or an imagined threat to our well-being, or that can be a physical, like a real life threat to our well-being in the moment. So again, we're hardwired to experience this emotion. It saves us a lot of time because again, we don't have to think about why I'm experiencing this feeling. It just moves us into action. So fear or anxiety moves us in commonly 3 different directions. We have the flight response. So I feel like I'm sensing danger. I get out of town. Keeps me safe. Again, I don't have to think about it. It's just this really quick action. We can have the freeze response where like just kind of hunker down, the thing will pass or the threat will pass and that'll be okay. Or we can fight. So again, I think I named this right at the beginning that the threat, especially current day, a lot of anxiety is coming from like imagined or perceived threats. So we kind of are walking around thinking that worst case scenario might happen or responding to something as if there's a physical threat, but when we check the facts, there's not a physical threat. But like our nervous system doesn't really know different. They just know that that emotion got set off. So again, for working with anxiety, we can ask ourselves, like when I'm feeling really anxious, like what was that? What's this emotion motivating me to do in this moment? Is there any function to that? What's the perceived threat, or what am I telling myself, or what's the story that I'm telling myself right now? Okay, next example. Let's talk about guilt. So guilt shows up when we've acted outside of our values. And there is a very important action urge that comes with guilt, which is the urge to make a repair. So we think about the functionality of this emotion that if every time I act outside my values, if I don't repair, then the damage is done. There's a lot of like net negative effects of not repairing. So guilt shows up to tell us to make that repair, to make amends, right? To repair the relationship or repair whatever needs repairing. So a lot of people, when we talk about guilt, like they don't want to feel guilty or feeling guilty sucks or like, oh, it's like this bad emotion. It's like, well, no, it's showing up for a reason. And if we listen to that, does it actually move us into action that's really functional and really effective? Commonly interchange the emotion of shame, which is similar, but it's different. Guilt, I acted outside of my values and my morals. So shame, maybe I did that also, but there's this additional component of like there's a fear of being rejected. So the function of shame, or what it motivates us to do, is shame will tell us to hide. So like if you knew this thing about me, you would kick me out of the pack, I'd be alone, I'd be canceled, right? So I'm going to hide, I'm going to try to conceal this behavior. So 2 different emotions with 2 different functions. And when I think about this in the workplace, I actually was just talking about this with someone this week. He was really trying to sort through when he makes mistakes, his go-to is just to hide them, like pretend they didn't happen. And there's a deep kind of core fear that if people find out, kind of that is activating that imposter syndrome. Like I shouldn't have been here in the first place. I'm gonna get fired. There's a big threat. So he's like really motivated to try to keep those losses or keep those errors from being known. But that has backfired many times. And so we talked about, well, if we tease this apart, if we just focus on that guilt part, what is the guilt telling you to do? And is there a way to do that you feel like maybe your manager will hear you and help you, or you can get support, or the whole team will benefit from not all these little errors building up on top of each other. So when he felt that feeling, it was like, no, this is just something I just need to get rid of. Don't tell anyone. Like, just move on. So it's just that little reframe of it. It's like, oh, maybe there is some action that I can take. And then the second part is, am I willing to take it? Am I willing to work with that?
It's so good. There's so many threads I want to pull on here. If I can, like, if I
Yes,
can,
what are you
like,
thinking?
segue just for one moment,
Yes,
I
of course, of
think
course.
the thing that I really love about this distinction between guilt and shame, I've never heard these definitions before, or the urge defined before,
Mm.
of the guilt being the urge there is to repair, shame's urge is to hide. What I learned about guilt and shame from Brene Brown's research is that guilt says I did something bad. It's anchored to the behavior. Shame says I, as a human, am bad.
Yes, yeah.
And to just double underline this for anybody who's in a leadership position, this is why it's so powerful to both, one, set really clear expectations. You hear this word like psychological safety bandied about a whole lot. And one of the elements that I look for in teams that shows me that it's a psychologically safe place is when the leadership says, mistakes are expected. It happens when you're new at something, or it especially happens when you're pushing the boat out and you're really trying to achieve something great. When it does happen, it's okay. Just like flag it as soon as possible. Let's address it. Let's learn from it. And like, let's figure out a plan so we won't repeat that mistake. It's one of the healthiest, most psychologically safe responses to it ever, right? Because mistakes are inevitable. We're human. We're inherently flawed. The other
Yes.
piece of that is, as leaders, I think if you can, whenever somebody on your team is doing something that's not right, if you can just check yourself before you intervene and make sure that you're highlighting or spotlighting the behavior that's not acceptable, not you as a person are bad. Doing the former really enables somebody to reflect on what it was that was done and perhaps make different choices going forward with your help or completely on their
Yes.
own, depending on your dynamic. But if you
Yeah.
tell this person, especially in front of other people, if you shame them, there's a time and a place for that, like especially in extreme circumstances, like somebody just acted almost violently towards someone or said something that was unbelievably derogatory and it's never okay. Fine, do
Yeah.
that in front of the group, but you will only, I think, compound the problem if you're over indexing on shame. So
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
index on the behavior and the guilt. That's actually constructive, actionable, motivating. Shame can be destructive. And like you said, it causes people to hide. So it just festers.
Yes. Yes. Love that. Focusing on the behavior, not the personal flaw or assuming that there's a personal flaw, more of like we're human. So powerful. Love that.
Thank you for letting me like be like, whoop, detour.
Yes, of course. um, okay, so guilt and shame. So let's talk about envy and jealousy because those are another two that get kind of commonly swapped around. So envy shows up when someone has something that I want, but I don't currently have it. And the function of that emotion showing up, or the action that pulls us into, is to work really hard at getting the thing. So, of course, there has to be some like safeguards on this one, or like some parameters around like what we're working towards or how hard we're working and all those things. But at the core of it, there's such a great function there. So I'm feeling envious, like, oh, this person or these people have something that I wish that I had. One, how valid is it to feel that? And then two, instead of trying to shut that down or just judging it, like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this emotion or it's such a bad emotion. No, I'm feeling it. Is there any kind of action I want to take on that would be effective? And then jealousy, on the other hand, is when there's a threat to losing something important to us. So what I have is feeling threatened, or I'm going to lose what I have. So the action urge there is to try to protect what you have. Insert so many songs that talk about that urge.
Blowing my mind. This is so good.
So I think it's really those four, so guilt, shame, jealousy, and envy. It's really, those kind of deviate off of the core five that I talked about in the very beginning, just because there's a lot of cultural components around them. But these are the most like commonly judged and misinterpreted emotions. And then when we do that to ourselves again, like I shouldn't be feeling this, there's something so wrong with me for feeling this, or maybe like I'm feeling it so strongly and I'm like, this is all bad. That just leads to more emotion dysregulation. Those self-judgments, maybe that leads for feeling envy. Now I'm feeling envious and I'm feeling shameful. And I think I'm a bad person, and like we're just kind of just spiraling. So again, I found this to be really helpful for myself of just being able to name either name the emotion and say, oh, it makes sense that it showed up, right? Or it makes sense that I'm feeling this urge to do this thing. And then again, we'll come back to, in next couple of weeks, we'll talk about working with that urge, whether or not it's effective to act on that urge. But if I can just name and understand it, that's going to regulate it. That's going to help kind of bring down some of the intensity, not lead to like some of those unhelpful secondary emotions also.
Mm-hmm. And so just to kind of recap quickly, the difference between the two is, so emotional regulation, if we use the analogy of like driving a car or a bus, like you're in the driver's seat, your emotions are passengers. So like you're very much like awake at the wheel, you're making decisions based on what you're learning from your passengers, right? Like, oh, okay, that's present, this is the urge, I get to choose whether or not I do that. That's emotional regulation. And emotional dysregulation is maybe one of those passengers jumped into the driver's seat and it's like driving the bus or the car. You're not the one who's making the decisions. Is that basically it?
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, love that. Okay, the last emotion, and we'll talk about some other things, is sadness. So another emotion that's commonly judged or just like unwanted. Like, I just don't want to feel sad today, or why is this emotion still here? If I had a nickel for every time someone said that. Like, well, let's talk about our emotions and why they show up. So sadness shows up when there's been a loss. And one example of this that I think is really, really common but so often overlooked is anytime something is not as we hoped it to be or that we wanted it to be, and inherent in that is a loss. And so it makes sense to feel sadness about it. This is a really common one. Like, I wanted to do this thing and then it all went awry, but like, why am I feeling so sad about it? Or I shouldn't be, it's not that big of a deal, or blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, no, there's a loss there. It actually makes sense that sadness is showing up. Sadness is interesting because sadness will tell us to withdraw. I think the backstory on this one is the idea that back in the day, if someone went missing, let's say from our camp or from our tribe, that urge to kind of withdraw is going to move us into inaction to conserve our energy in case we have to then go seek and go find what's been missing. And then there's another function of sadness, which sadness also helps to align us back to our values or what's important. Like anytime there's, I don't know, like a big tragedy or like an accident, and you hear people, when they interview people like after something tragic, people say like, I'm going to quit my job, or I'm going to be a better parent, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. It's like this intense feeling of sadness realigns us back to what's important. So I also think this is a really important one not to overlook. Like, what is sadness trying to communicate? Is it giving us information that maybe I need to switch gears, or maybe there's something that's happening here that's not fully in alignment, or I want to do something different?
And that's interesting because I feel like sadness often comes after guilt. And so if guilt is, I've acted outside of my values, and then sadness follows and it helps you realign to your values, like, well, that's a cool chain reaction.
Would you look at that?
Also, I think what's really cool about the way that you're spelling these out of like, what's the definition of this thing? How do you define this emotion, or what is the kind of the purpose of it? And then like the urge that it moves you toward, or that you kind of can naturally move into. I feel like it's a helpful thing that you could spot yourself in either, right? If you're kind of aware, like, oh yeah, it's clear, like immediately clear, like, oh yeah, I've acted outside of my values. I'm feeling guilty in some way. Or like for me sometimes, like withdrawing, partially because I'm an introvert and I'm exhausted sometimes, other times noticing that I'm withdrawing, like, oh, interesting. Like, how am I doing? Why don't I check in with myself and just see how I'm doing right now? Because maybe there is some emotion at play that I haven't acknowledged yet or become conscious of.
Sure.
So you
Yeah.
could use the urge itself just to be
Yes.
aware of what your tells are.
Yes. Yeah, we talk about that. Um, well, one of the things that we put together, like our emotion regulation guide for our
Yeah.
people, one of the things we talk about is like knowing your cues, like being really aware of what your cues are that maybe emotions are coming on board, or they may like, air quotes, hijack you in one direction or the other.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we just don't know what those cues are. So I love this framing of paying attention to the action urge, or what is the urge that you're feeling like doing. And it's like a reverse engineering to find out the emotion, right? Like follow that action urge and ask questions about it, be curious about it. Like, where did that come from? Or what might have prompted that? And then we figure out what the emotion is. Or maybe there's a unmet need there or something happening.
Because that actually, you sort of read my mind with that, because I was going to say, since we're almost at time, I was going to ask you, like, what is something that people can do to practice this or to, like, grow this skill more?
Yeah. So again, we'll put a visual up. I want to we'll list out these emotions and show the action urge so people can start building kind of fluency and just understanding those urges. And one of the best things you can do, especially at the beginning, is just to start tracking your emotions. So there's like formal ways of doing this. So some people like will journal, or using a bullet journal, that's kind of doing small check-ins. But really any form of tracking, just paying attention to either your urges or trying to name your emotions. What were you feeling today? How about throughout the week? Giving some data points is the best way to start kind of, again, building this fluency, this new language around your emotions. And then that's the inroad to being able to work with them further. So I love tracking. I'm a big fan. Ask anyone who's ever worked with me. They've probably had them track something. And then next time we come back together, we'll talk about some of the things that make regulation more difficult. And then we're going to map out like a very intricate mapping of what's happening behind the scenes of when emotion shows up. And then that also will give us more entry points to starting to work with it. So stay tuned for learning more about our emotions.
Excellent. And I think if I can add on as like something what people can do is, I think sometimes I experience leaders coming into sessions being like, I'm so almost with this, not desperation, but this real sense of urgency of like, this has to change. This has to change now. Like I need it to stop happening the way that it's happening. And I think this suggestion of growing your awareness by tracking things is really key, because behind all meaningful and lasting behavior change is a deep awareness. And so I would suggest that if, as you're tracking things, kind of like the counterpart that rides in the sidecar to that is just generally just observing and just like noticing. Like, what do you notice in your day to day? Like, do you notice that there's certain like times of day or like patterns to when you might experience this thing that you want to be different, or you fall into habits that you want to be different or change. And I think just as if you have like a little drone flying around with you, just observing, like just watching from like back here, like what's going on? Like what patterns do we see?
Just taking some notes.
Yeah, just gather some information there, because as unsatisfying as it might sound as an action step, that is in and of itself a massive action step, because it really helps you build
Huge.
the most solid foundation to act from, right?
And if we, yes, and if we can add a mindfulness component on here, don't judge whatever you're tracking.
Yeah.
Just track it.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. We'll do all the analysis later, but just for now, just notice. Just flex that muscle of being the observer and again, taking notes. Like if we want to find that pattern, it starts with the day-to-day or moment by moment.
Suggestion, and especially because the Olympics are happening right now, and I'm pretty sure you said this was your voice that you use, but like if it helps,
Broadcaster voice.
yes, if your judgment becomes loud, I encourage you to say it out loud in your broadcaster voice to help just like, okay, name it, then let it
Diffuse
go.
it a little bit. Yes.
Diffuse it. Oh, it's such a fun tactic.
And if anyone's wondering what we're talking about, we'll link it in the show notes. You can
Yes.
go revisit that
To the
episode.
episode. Sounds great.
All right. Till next time.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We're so glad you're here. If you like this episode, please rate, share, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Check us out on social at The Skills Podcast or On Point Practice, and check out our website at theonpointpractice.com. Until next time.